I'm going to attempt to keep this at 5 minutes, but wanted to just cover a product by the name of InStat that I'd love to purchase for my program, but unfortunately we don't have the funds. So just a really comprehensive breakdown or video or game analysis breakdown, I should say. So it shows initially, obviously, the players that played, minutes, etc. But this is actually something that I really enjoyed seeing is the average position that each player takes up on the field. So we spent a lot of time last season working on our two outside backs, 5 and 2, 8 plays in there at times as well, being really advanced. And the 16 dropping in and splitting out center backs. So it was really interesting to see that they adopted those positions. This was a really important game going into playoffs. We were tied 1-1, ended up going into overtime, but we were pushing for the winner. So interesting to see here that they had us down as a 4-3-3 at the beginning, and then at the end of the match looked like a 3-5-2, when in all honesty, we didn't change our shape. So that was actually really intriguing to see how advanced our number 5 played in this game. She had a huge role to play in this game. 2 is the other outside back, and 5 looking like she played a lot higher. This is really interesting to see sort of how the game fluctuates in 15-minute periods. You can see here that we're in the ascendancy in terms of shots on target up until the last 15 minutes of the game. Ball possession, challenges, etc. You can see again where we sort of lost the ascendancy. And if you're looking at the 60th to the 90th minute, could that be fatigue potentially playing a role? Seeing here that a lot of our efforts are coming down the left side of the field, or higher percentage of attacks are coming down the left side of the field than the right side of the field. And that our performance indexes were a lot higher than those. So thinking back on the game, I felt like we were the better team overall, and the stats certainly showed that. Let's just flick through here. This is an area that I find really interesting. Just sort of seeing, just flicking to our team, just sort of seeing the heat map and pretty much every touch that a player takes up, and what area of the field that she takes it. So if you look at our left back here, she's obviously occupying the left side of the field. Predominantly red dots would be successful actions and gray crosses unsuccessful. It also shows how this particular player was performing in comparison to the team as a whole. So you can see that this player, Lisa Muir, was really big factor for us in the first 15 minutes. Almost double the number of touches on average of the rest of the team. This player over here, Tori Mado, I didn't feel like had a huge factor in the game, but according to the index, she was our highest performing player with 182. So certainly something that you can look back on as a coach and make sure that your thoughts during the game tie into what's actually happening on the field. Let's see, other cool things to look at with this program is where our shots are coming from and which particular players are taking those shots. And just sort of the accuracy. So we obviously only took one, but we were really successful from there. So if we look at our finishing inside the box with only 29% accuracy, that's definitely an area that we would want to hit in training more consistently. Where we're committing fouls, so obviously set pieces play a huge role in the game. So you can see here that my right back is committed, or we're committing fouls in the right back area of the field, which is a really dangerous area to give up fouls in. This for me is sort of important to note. 15 lost balls in this zone. It is a zone of the field that we would expect our players to take more risks, play more penetrating passes, higher percentage lost balls in this area, obviously, because we're playing higher percentage risky passes. Obviously we wouldn't want to be playing risky passes from this area of the field, but then you can look up here and see um, who is giving up the ball in those particular areas of the field. Um, so that's interesting. And then just finally, if we scroll all the way down, this is one thing I like to note is sort of key sequences in the game, where they're originating from, which players are involved, whether they're stemming from dribbles or passes, and then what the distance of those passes are. So you can see here, this was a little combination with 10 and 26 that led to us getting in on the right side. And then this one is more of a long ball that's played in over the top for number 9. So, we had pretty good distribution between combining to get in behind their back line and then obviously playing some longer balls. If we bounce over here to the individual analysis, this is looking back at our left back, Mua. I remember specifically speaking with her at halftime about the fact that she was playing too many long balls and their back line was really deep. So if you look at this here in the first half, you can see a lot of long, unsuccessful passes. Whereas in the second half, she tidied that up a little bit. And I mean, she still had a couple where she was trying to hit crosses in the box, but overall, a huge increase in the number of successful passes in the second half. And I would say she was a huge factor in the reason we ended up winning that game in overtime. Down here, you can sort of see where she fit into the index of each player. So even though I felt like she was one of our top 2 performers in this game, she actually sat a little bit lower in terms of how InStat monitored her performance level. So with that being said, socio-behavioral implications, I think one of the things to sort of be aware of as a coach is if we're going to put a huge emphasis on a stat program like this, you may see players playing higher percentage passes or going into situations where they feel like they can be successful, so their stats show up more favorably. If I'm an attacker that's exceptional on the dribble, but you have a 20% success rate on the dribble, I may be a little bit more reserved in terms of my desire to take players on if we're just looking at stat breakdowns on a weekly basis and we're not really looking at the video analysis. So I think as a coach, you have to use a stat program in conjunction with video. You have to be careful about how much you stress it, whether that's looking at successful and unsuccessful actions, whether that's looking at heart rate monitors and GPS trackers. If we're always stressing that, for instance, the players that are covering the most amount of ground with a GPS tracker are going to be the most successful, you may find players that just work overly hard and don't actually be sophisticated in their decisions and just sort of sit in pockets of space if that's what the game dictates. So I think stat programs like this are a great way to look at players' performances and just sort of show them some trends in their game. But I think you have to be really careful as a coach to put too much emphasis on these type of programs. Pros and cons, obviously really expensive, and you can spend a huge amount of time looking at things like this. From a pro standpoint, if your program can afford it, then it saves you a huge amount of time in the office, sitting down and doing individual breakdown for each player. I think the players that are very diligent will probably really enjoy just looking at all of their touches and sort of their heat maps and their decision making. InStat also has an option where you can clip every single touch that the player has. So rather than watching a full 90-minute game, I could watch maybe 2 minutes of just all of my touches, which I think can be really valuable for players. Drawbacks, I think it changes the way that you think about your performance, and I think that can be for the good. But I think there's also a certain aspect where you'll play the game around trying to get a higher percentage on your index versus just playing the game to make a big impact for your team. Sorry that's long. Hope that works. Thank you.